It's the curse of the Strait of Gibraltar. Looking at the map, these two massive land masses reach out like star-crossed lovers, yet they can never truly touch. An invisible red line has sealed off every single attempt to cross this sea. What on earth is actually lurking at the bottom of that ocean? As the crow flies, it's so close you could literally spot the flickering lighthouse on the opposite shore. If you could just drive it, you'd officially switch continents in under half an hour. And yet, while humanity has easily hollowed out the snow-capped Alps to build epic transit tunnels, and constructed blindingly bright bridges spanning dozens of miles across open water, right here, the absolute best, state-of-the-art tunnel boring machines on the planet are reduced to helpless scrap metal. Don't even try to blame a lack of funding or tech. This golden waterway carries trillions of dollars in global trade over its crests every single day. The harsh truth: we are fighting a force of nature that is infinitely more furious. Mini Hook, would you dare to completely drain an ocean? Back in 1920, an insanely ambitious German architect proposed choking the entire Mediterranean Sea with a colossal, world-altering super dam. His grand master plan manually dropped the water level by 200 meters to forge a new continent, essentially forcing Europe and Africa to weld together through the sheer brute force of engineering. The blueprint was so ridiculously ambitious that it required building 7 extra auxiliary dams and completely overhauling the canal's lock systems, just to balance out the water levels. Sounds like a sci-fi masterpiece, right? But Mother Nature immediately handed down a death sentence. Draining that water would trigger an apocalyptic, global ecological disaster, trading an entire, thriving ecosystem just for a concrete highway. Not a single nation was willing to bankroll that delusion. Everything seemed permanently buried until the late 20th century. The kings of Spain and Morocco finally sat down together and dusted off those old blueprints. They shook hands, throwing a massive mountain of cash into the greatest ocean exploration game in history. That historic handshake launched research vessels right into the churning waves. Radar screens blinked frantically as water bubbled violently around the drill bits. But just as we were about to finally touch the seabed, snap, the drill bit gets obliterated. They couldn't even drop an anchor without the pipes shattering to pieces. The ocean formally slapped the world's top engineers right in the face. Don't let the calm, glassy surface of this strait fool you. Deep down, it is an absolute war zone. Freezing, ultra-dense water from the Arctic violently smashes into the warm, lighter waters of the Mediterranean, ripping the ocean apart into gigantic, deadly underwater vortexes. Add in hurricane-force winds screaming across the soaking wet decks. Just keeping a massive ship stable and preventing it from drifting away is a miracle in itself, let alone trying to drill and take precise geological measurements. After a decade of pure deadlock, experts circled the shortest 14-kilometer straight line on the map. The catch: the depth here plunges to a terrifying 800 meters. To put that in perspective, it's deep enough to swallow 3 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. Trying to build a 1,000-meter-tall bridge pillar climbing up from a hollow underwater canyon. The cost alone would instantly incinerate the economies of both countries. So, what about digging a tunnel straight through the seabed? That layer of loose mud and gravel on the seabed, just the tip of the iceberg. The most terrifying geological truth was finally exposed. The Strait of Gibraltar sits directly on top of a death fault line, where the massive Eurasian and African tectonic plates violently collide. Remember the Lisbon earthquake that killed tens of thousands? Now, imagine giant bridge pillars being torn apart the moment these tectonic plates shift. Any tunnel crossing this fault line could become a deep-sea grave. This zone pushes modern engineering to its limits. The ideal 14-kilometer route had to be abandoned. A bridge would also need extreme height to clear one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth. Engineers were forced to choose a new 28-kilometer route. The water is shallower, about 300 meters deep, and the geology is far more stable. Even so, travel between Casablanca and Madrid could drop to just 5.5 hours. The final plan called for 3 parallel tunnels. A Swiss engineering firm won the contract, and Spain announced construction would begin in 2008. Silence. The rustle of blueprints. A lone ship horn echoes across the sea. Just as victory seemed near, politics intervened. 2 Spanish-controlled enclaves on Moroccan soil remained a source of tension. A visit by the Spanish king in 2008 reopened old wounds. Morocco recalled its ambassador. Border disputes intensified, and the entire project was frozen. This time, the obstacle wasn't nature, it was human pride. More than a decade passed. Engineering advanced, but the tunnel remained indefinitely delayed. Political trust lagged behind technology. Today, 80% of EU trade and vast amounts of global oil still pass through this narrow 14-kilometer gateway. Before digging a tunnel, Spain and Morocco must first build trust. In the end, humanity wasn't defeated by earthquakes, ocean depths, or powerful currents, but by centuries of unresolved conflict. Perhaps one day, when both nations truly reconcile, the first train racing through this undersea tunnel will mark humanity's victory over the ocean.